The cyberpunk subgenre of science fiction has always been enthralling. Ever since Charles Babbage invented something resembling a computer over 100 years ago, the world has been on this never-ending landslide of innovation. I am among the last generation of us who grew up in a time where constant access to the internet wasn't a given. Now people arrive from space, where babies come from, with the ability to look up who would win in a fight, Jesus Christ or Zeus, the moment they get here. In all likelihood, just guessing, you're using a computer of some sort to listen to me even say this, because otherwise you're in my house right now and I am scared. Art is at the forefront of change, constantly wondering what it means if this war happens, or how things would look like if everybody was a horse instead of a person. Technology is no different. We are dead set on writing about how crazy it's gonna get. Cars will definitely fly any day now, they've been saying it for years. But art is where we push boundaries too. We don't just question how things might become, we question why. We make people uncomfortable by challenging our current perspectives. People are quick to forget that everything they know was completely fucking insane 100 years ago. Every 100 years. You are going to look like a stupid Neanderthal to your great-grandchildren, just like you're now sick of answering how to copy-paste or listen to Grandpa ruin Thanksgiving by talking about how he doesn't understand the gay people incessantly. It's the way of the world. Cyberpunk is the natural evolution of these two aspects of art, wondering and daring. Because of its exponential development, it's always hard to say exactly where a movement originates insofar as credit is concerned. In 1988, a board game called Cyberpunk came out, capitalizing on the slowly growing genre, but 20 years before it, Philip Dick wrote probably the first, or at least the earliest famous example, story exploring these themes, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? The book 1982's Blade Runner is based on. Replicants are shown to be artificial intelligence, but they're identical to people in most ways outside of their pre-programmed early dying. Here we are forced to wonder at what point a human is separate from a robot acting like one, and can we even tell the difference? Is it fair to use them? We're shown all this stuff about all other animals being extinct and how quickly the world could devolve into authoritarianism and extreme class disparity. These are the defining features of cyberpunk works. Exploration of our relationship to technology, and social commentary usually depicted as unfathomable technological advancement juxtaposed with the impoverished using it overseen by the elite who have only become more powerful than ever before. The 80s really started to blow this shit up. Tons of writers were in love with it, too many to explain here. Anime and manga were no exception. Akira kicked it off in 1982, same year as Blade Runner, introducing a Japanese perspective on corruption, the culture's difficulty accepting the change, and children growing up in a world increasingly dominated by advanced machinery. Ghost in the Shell, my favorite, expanded upon what it means to be human if you yourself are now a machine physically. Serial Experiments Lane demonstrates a decreasing boundary between the physical and digital world. Battle Angel Alita literally divides the rich from the poor as garbage collectors picking up the still hyper-futuristic scraps from beneath an exclusive floating city. Cowboy Bebop shows us that no matter how different things get, we're still bored, alone, and purposeless unless we find meaning for ourselves. This is just scratching the surface. We could spend the rest of our lives playing with perspective here. But I've always found it incredible how many works manage to keep with this while maintaining their own identity and often building upon these ideas in new ways that keep the cyberpunk world ever-changing and always inquiring. To me, this is Cyberpunk 2077 and Edgerunners' biggest failing. No matter how hard I look, I see so little substance underneath the madness. Before I do that though, I want you to know there's a lot to like in this anime spin-off, but just like the flashy, empty narrative of the 2077 world, a lot of what I really enjoy is surface level. Edgerunners is created in collaboration with CD Projekt Red by Studio Trigger, quite possibly the studio I feel hyped over above all others. Trigger's visual style is without fail a roller coaster that's broken and won't stop, and their ability to intertwine a comprehensible story, often a meaningful one, with that pacing is unmatched. You tell me a Trigger show is coming out and I tell you that I'm ready to come. I'm probably going to go into specifics as I continue moving through the plot with you, but I think anybody who doesn't say this show looks incredible is going through cyberpsychosis themselves. And to really slam into you that this is a no bullshit, uncompromising world, it does not beat around the bush with the violence. These guys had a fucking blast drawing all kinds of innards exploding everywhere, eyeballs splashing around, bone fragments zipping by like shrapnel. It's like I'm watching Happy Tree Friends. It's beyond wild. At a glance, the colors, the shot composition, the extreme detail, there's not a single fucking complaint I can make about its appearance. Frankly, it could easily be Trigger's most impressive looking work to date, and I couldn't be happier that this almost certainly means great things to come from them with even bigger budgets than ever before. Sometimes quality is recognized, and I am grateful. So now let's take a closer look at the product piece by piece. I haven't really done this before on video, so here's hoping I don't sound like a babbling idiot. Episode 1 starts us out immediately finale with this fucking amazing scene of some crazy bastard just cartoonishly blowing cops away and using rainbow magic to fly around killing them more efficiently. The reason this is happening is told quite succinctly: cyberpsychosis. An easy enough concept to grasp just from the name. The man lost sight of himself and became violently delusional after flying too close to the digital sun and overdoing the cyber implants that slowly make him less fleshy and more weaponized, something the human mind is stated not to handle well, essentially without exception. Needless to say, this is important, and possibly the closest thing I could find resembling a message about the interaction between computer and man here, albeit pretty shallow in comparison to how thoughtfully something like Ghost in the Shell already explores that line between being yourself and being something possibly inhuman. But stylistically, this stands out as everything does in this show, and I don't blame Trigger for making this straightforward and over the top. It's kind of their MO, at least, again on the surface. Oh, by the way, this first scene plays what is only the first of a ridiculously cool and emotionally dynamic soundtrack, so just assume I'm complimenting that in like every segment unless I mention it being especially ear-catching, in which case even more so. After the special psycho police Max Tack dispose of the guy, it's revealed that this is just a replay our protagonist David is experiencing through a brain dance. Virtual reality movies taken as far as possible. Sometime after, David takes a stroll through Night City, showcasing our cyberpunk world, a society full of technology being advertised intrusively and homeless people using it while sitting amidst garbage bags. Pretty rapidly we get the picture that capitalism has a nice little stranglehold around here. Main girl Lucy is briefly introduced about now through a super creative transition emphasizing her impossible to ignore hair. Oh, but she's smoking. I guess the tobacco industry stopped running those ads about losing your teeth. David makes it to his destination, a fancy rich kid school that he clearly loves attending, where he's emotionlessly chastised for not being in uniform by the robot teacher, and then lambasted by the rich kids for having bootleg learning goggles. They may have had a point though. The pirated software the Oculus uses promptly fucks up the whole class and lands David a trip to the principal and a call to his mommy. After mom tells principal to shut the fuck up, he's staying in school, we get mom expositioning her heart out about how only corporate fucks have a happy life in Night City, and she's working her ass off for her sweet baby boy. But all I hear while she's talking is the realization I'm talking to myself about how this lady is a fucking goner any second now because hero motives and shit. So anyway, the medical team doesn't help her because private health insurance is way out of hand and you just die in the streets like a dog if you don't pay enough. Damn you, capitalism! David's left to his own devices to find money and take care of shit for a while she recovers in the hospital. And just as you're starting to think you were wrong and maybe she doesn't die, she dies. And boy, does this doctor's bedside manner need some work. Oh, but right before this happens, David also gets his dick pushed in by the rich kids at school for being poor and different. Rich kid knows kung fu like that one time in the Matrix. You know the one. Episode 1 beats us over the head with the moral of the story as David is ruthlessly hounded by the financial responsibility he's inherited, faced with losing everything and nobody gives a fuck. This is, in my opinion, as deep as the social commentary goes for the most part. Edgerunners nails the whole society sucks because the elite corporals control everything and fuck you if you're poor, but here's a Quest 2 and a fleshlight. But and maybe this is intentional even though there's a bunch of serious shit happening. It's so in your face about this point, it comes off as satire. Like Idiocracy, Carl's Jr. has confiscated your kids because you're poor levels of blatantly giving me the idea. More on that later though. Earlier, David found that his mom was muling a military-grade implant spine that he's told would absolutely drive him ballistic if he tried putting it on. Advice he ignores as he tells his Ripper doc to put it on him. A request only agreed to because Doc snags the device for free if David flips his lid. Blood still running down his back, David wastes no time in demolishing the rich kid in the middle of class just cause fuck that guy. Funniest shit ever. This assault catches the attention of rich kid's father, a bigwig at one of two prominent megacorporations, Arasaka, and owner of the academy. See, it's shocking to people that David can turn on the super spine, a Sondaviston, the one the cyber psycho was using in that brain dance earlier, without bleeding out of every orifice in his body. With no goal left on David's mind, he's swiftly robbed on the train by Lucy, a crime David notices. Lucy amicably offers him a job working with her to rob corpos of their special chippies, which David agrees to so that he doesn't starve to death. Using the Sandy, however, catches up to him after their banditry, and Lucy takes him to a nice ambulance lady who decides it's a good idea to try and rob the pair at gunpoint for the expensive tech David's now wielding. This leads to possibly the coolest transition I've ever seen when Lucy enacts their escape by throwing the stretcher out into the road, depicted at first entirely from David's upward point of view, the roof of the emergency vehicle suddenly becoming the sky. Temporarily holding back his urge to vomit, David takes this visually stunning moment to infatuate infatuatedly gaze into a clearly batshit Lucy's eyes. Also, when Lucy pounces on David to grab him from the escape, I'm very reminded that this is a studio trigger work with that exaggerated perspective. Ripper Doc explains to this fucking brainlet that he needs immunoblocker meds or else his brain's going to melt out of his ears using his implants. Lucy says they're done for the night shift, but invites David over to awkwardly sit around and build romantic tension. Lucy explains her dream of going to the moon for whatever reason, and shows David her moon simulation. A first for her, as she's shown nobody else purportedly. This is cut short when that two-timing bitch invites her gang in to hold David hostage for the Sondevistan that their leader, Maine, originally purchased for himself. Maine kind of eases off upon hearing that David is Gloria's son, and also that she's dead, explaining what Mom was doing to make money for David's education. These guys are literal cyberpunks, criminals who take on cybery jobs for bougie people who need their cyber skills to accommodate corpo warfare and stuff. After some back and forth, Maine agrees to let David show his worth and pay off the Sondevistan by joining his crew, if he doesn't fuck up day one. Meanwhile, David is invited to re-enroll in school because Arasaka secretly thinks it'd be cool to beta test their inventions on David due to his unusual resilience to using implants. David doesn't bite. The first job to steal limousine traffic logs from a corpo's driver goes kind of well, especially if you look past the parts where they get caught hacking the limo, get shot at, cause a car chase wherein an unlicensed David uses the Sandy to safely drive into oncoming traffic, force Maine to de-atomize some hired headhunters, and receive flack from the guy who hired them, Faraday, for creating a scene. Otherwise pretty good, and Maine okays him for the job. For a minute, it's really looking like David's got a little found family going on here. Even in Night City, where you can trust nobody, their expression's much friendlier now that they know David's good on his word. David does some more stuff for the crew, like delivering new hands to Pillar, the guy who's all about having big hands. Also, he goes running with Lucy because stamina is important, mixed in with all kinds of group bonding through missions and talking about man stuff like sex. This is followed by your stupid illusions being shattered as Pillar's brains are shot all over the place by a urinating homeless person, bringing David with us in an intense realization that this isn't a game, and in the underground of Night City, you can die for no reason at any minute. Rebecca, Pillar's sister, gets understandably upset by this. She's the only one allowed to kill him, you see. She says, shielding herself from the devastation. David wasn't sure how to pull the trigger on a gun before, but now he figures it out, cause Lucy might have exploded otherwise. David walks Lucy home, resulting in their romance being fully realized, a move that I have several problems with, not the least of which is that it feels completely forced to me. I want to go into the character some more later, but Lucy is not my favorite. I liked her fake self better. Too bad in reality she's a girl who's different from David. She's got skeletons in her closet. She's got a backstory and she can't get close to anyone because of it. She doesn't offer much to me in terms of personality outside of this typical I've got problems so guarded persona, which David manages to relieve her of, I guess, because he's like honest enough. This is also around the time where it was readily apparent that Rebecca also has a thing for David, and she almost immediately has more going on for her. She actually feels more complicated and full as a character. Up to this point, we've seen Rebecca be cheerful and uplifting toward her friends, we've seen her put on a show and be a distracting baby face, her anger erupt, her puzzling relationship with her brother, and now a loss that is evident will affect her. Rebecca is multifaceted and tries for David. Lucy shows him how to exercise. I just didn't see a lot of basis for this other than she's the main girl, so they're gonna fall in love.
俺が死んだらくれてやってもいいぞ。その前に入れるクローム山ほど言っとけ。
Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. For a while now, their super internet searcher Kiwi has been surfing around trying to find information on Arasaka because the gang doesn't know why the hell they're being asked to do this shit for Faraday. The bigwig Tanaka, Kiwi finds, is into gore porn brain dances. With David's help, because he too is a sick fuck, they track down the snuff filmographer and enter a confrontation with him when their abduction attempt goes fucky. Once they have this muppet under control, they get him to lure Tanaka over so they can get some information. Tanaka obviously has some nice weapons hid away for the times he concludes he's being jumped, the altercation ending with Maine punching a dent into his skull and the artist dying as collateral, a twinge of reality questioning thrown in as David watches the guy laugh before his final breath. Episode 6 is a complete fucking shit show in the best way possible. After what feels like honestly not the most eventful episode focusing on some part of the grander mission that doesn't feel all that important, we are suddenly thrust into a disjointed mess. I almost thought I skipped an episode or something. What the fuck is going on? But this is deliberate. We are meant to feel confused and out of sorts because Maine is about to dissociate and rapidly fall apart. His stress in the situation they found themselves in boils over into violence, lashing out at Kiwi, losing his focus on what's in front of him, and uncharacteristic resentment being shown in scenes snapping from one place to another. All the while, Lucy is feeling the pressure. She's supposed to look for information on Arasaka since Kiwi's not doing so hot, and she is visibly distressed about this idea. As long as David's there, it should be fine though, she thinks. That is until Tanaka starts to wake up in the middle of Lucy's dive into his head. David's supposed to trank the guy guy, but straining to keep up with it all, he too starts to question what he's even doing, forgetting for a moment that if he keeps listening to this guy, Lucy's in deep shit. And now he's dead and they have to get the fuck out of there. David gets Lucy to the safety of their getaway vehicle as Maine and Dorio, the team's strong girl and his lover, stay behind to clean up. David decides he's going to go back and help the others escape, but it's over. Maine's lost it. He's gone full cyber psycho. Dorio's dead, and Maine's not even sure if he killed her or not. This is by far the greatest moment of the series. Not because everything's going to hell, but the music pulls you into the insanity. The visual direction, harsh colors, wonky shot compositions, Studio Trigger's movement style pumping the adrenaline, it all accumulates into a scene that genuinely drags you down with it. While I can't say I love a lot about where the story inevitably goes, the purely emotional impact scenes like this can have is a testament to Trigger's skill in portraying those feelings. In Maine's final moments, he manages one last bit of lucidity, acting as that guide for David one more time. It's the end of the road for Maine, but not for David. And then Maine blows everything up and David is permanently scarred for sure this time. I wonder how this will change him, this common moment. Also, Lucy's not telling David something she saw while searching Tanaka. And time skip! David's the leader now and he's buff so his head looks smaller. Rebecca's taken up the mantle of Big Hand's team member in honor of her brother, knew she cared. And for now, Lucy's nowhere to be seen. She's on indefinite leave. There's this cool ass scene where David jumps around a guy with a big hammer using the Sondivistin in slow motion, played out in real time immediately after to show it all happening in half a second. Baller. David's still ignoring Rebecca. I'm sure that won't be a theme, because he's a fucking loser. He's off to get more implants. Oh boy, just saw my surrogate dad go nuts, better do the same shit. Faraday wants David to play ball like Maine did, but he can't help but notice Lucy's not around and he thinks it'd be a good idea for David to change her mind. Kiwi also seems oddly interested in this. David does try to convince Lucy to team up again. She's still living with him now in their big house he bought with his lots of money. Lucy, after all this time in their relationship, finally tells David her big backstory. She's an orphan that nobody would care if they went missing. Never heard this before. Arasaka had taken her in as a raised netrunner to be sent on suicide missions into the old internet, the one with the memes and shit, where malware attacks anything that moves. Eventually, the survivors use their elite hacks or abilities to fuck up Arasaka's system and escape. How did they not think this could happen? Lucy escapes presumably alone since everybody else didn't dodge the bullets. Now, Lucy explains, she finally has someone to fear for besides herself. And this fear brings us to today, where Lucy's sneaking around suffocating any corpo loose ends that might threaten David. Maybe she should have spent more time protecting David from himself, because David kills somebody else's mom with her own backstory while trying to steal Arasaka data because, surprise, surprise, he's losing his fucking mind. Faraday works for the other big company, Militech, Arasaka's competitor trying to play King of the Hill. Arasaka peeps are onto Faraday, and while David continues to slip out of reality, Arasaka attempts to buy Faraday over to fuck with Militech. Still though, the goal remains the same for him. Find Lucy. Arasaka wants her head for breaching their security. Kiwi ominously tells Lucy a message she's always told her, because Kiwi brought Lucy onto the team: don't trust anyone. Namely her, it turns out later. Kiwi's in on Faraday's plan because they write a bigger paycheck over in Corpo Land. Can't say I blame her. David's becoming noticeably more psychotic while running the team. And Rebecca sure notices, cementing herself as the best character of this series and once again a less misguided love interest. She tries to talk to David as a person, hoping he will hear her out and calm the fuck down with the hardware. Well, it's a bit too late for the straightforward approach, whereas before she plays it cool and tries to get David to just hang out. David's seeing guns explode out of corpses now, and he loses his chill on the Ripper Doc, perceiving him as more antagonistic than he actually is. Ripper Doc says, alright, fuck off now, here's your super meds, they'll keep you sane for like 5 minutes, but your dumbass ain't coming back here, and it's not because I'm kicking you out. Lucy finally gets her act together and tries talking to David about maybe backing out of this work. They really don't need it. Remember how Lucy said it's her dream to leave the city, David? You guys could totally do that with all the money you have now. This is where David becomes the entire fucking problem and an insufferable asswipe. I was put here on this earth by my mommy and helped by Maine for a purpose I haven't fulfilled yet. Oh, what's that? Did Maine want you to learn nothing from his mistakes? Did Gloria want her son to become a good-for-nothing criminal who doesn't know when to back down? You know, if you back out now, Lucy won't have to cover for your ass anymore either. But the motherfucker is so stubborn, or crazy, it's hard to tell at this point, that he'd rather go separate ways with Lucy if it means continuing on this path. With that turning point steered clear of, it becomes the perfect time for Lucy to run off and once again cover David's ass. And here we are, the aforementioned Kiwi turncoating. Lucy's trapped. By now it becomes clear that this frustration I'm feeling is part of the setup to a tragedy, one that could have been avoided. That's the story we're being told though, and I still don't really know why. I'll get back to that. David, unaware of Lucy's situation it seems, is now being sent straight into Faraday's trap to capture him for Arasaka's experiments. Rebecca, in a flashback, is now aware of the full breadth of David's condition upon seeing enough immunoblockers on his person to stop an elephant. Then David puts a totally unfair weight on Rebecca's shoulders to help him stay sane as long as possible if it comes down to it. Rebecca, knowing she can't stop him, goes along with it, clinging to hope that it'll at least keep him from dying a horrible death. She Lucy is fed up with his horseshit though and demands he not use his fucking Sondervisten. Advice David once again disregards completely. At least Rebecca can take her anger out on a bunch of pawns. Officially cornered by Faraday's Militech fools, they have no choice but to discover Arasaka's big secret, the cyber skeleton, the implant to end all implants. It'll also put an end to you. You'll definitely drop every marble you have trying this thing on. Good thing David's super resilient to that. Oh wait! Rebecca's final pleas to not get into the fucking thing, "You will die," are ignored again because Faraday mimics Lucy's voice and tells David to get in the robot. Lucy breaks free just in time to hear from David that it's too late and he's already in the skeleton thing, but at least he now knows she's in trouble. And Kiwi's gone. Oops. Wow, this thing looks fucking stupid. At what point is this just a fucking mech? Why does this thing have to replace your limbs? Anyway, it's super powerful, flies around, controls gravity and magnets or something, and mixed with David's sanity can take out entire armies single-handedly, which David proceeds to do just as Faraday planned. What the Corpos didn't account for, however, is David managing to stay sane this long and coming right for them to get Lucy. Rebecca and their driver, who's a main character at this point, agrees to help. God, why? Kiwi's regretful of her betrayal and wants to skip town, but Faraday threatens no pay if she doesn't help move Lucy to Arasaka HQ. With nowhere else left for this plot to go, the remains of the team do a big car chase into the city, which is all pretty fucking cool, but still not as exciting to me as episode 6. This is, of course, intertwined with David jumping between completely certifiable and normal as he's continually medicated temporarily.
進路予測で 74% の確率で荒坂に向かっていると出ています。
ここに来るだと？なぜだ？
わかりません。我々が計画したことだとは知らないはずですが。
What do you mean, how does he know? The vehicles have your company branding in big letters on them. Meanwhile, Kiwi does as she's told, which ultimately destroys her because why the hell would you trust this guy? With the last of her energy, she transmits Lucy's location to the team because fuck the man. It's the least she can do. With Arasaka coming to the realization that they're fucked if they don't stop David, they call upon the most borged up man in existence, the prominent actually from the game villain, Atom Smasher, Arasaka's personal bodyguard and genuine psychopath. I guess you can't go cyber psycho if killing lesser chromeheads is already your entire persona. While Faraday and Arasaka's men bicker about their dumb shit, David shows up and snaps Faraday's totally out of touch legs off. Why is this guy not more concerned that a military-grade whack job just teleported in front of him? David goes into overdrive, murdering basically everybody other than Mr. Smasher and jumping out of the building with Lucy like King Kong. David and Lucy have their last little romantic moment together as they talk about only ever wanting to protect each other. David doing the slightly better despite all this being his fault on some level. David tells Lucy to go live her dreams. That's his dream, at least now it is, because he's absolutely dying in the next 5 minutes and doesn't have a better option lined up insofar as dreams are concerned. With Lucy in the escape vehicle, Rebecca has her one and only moment of the show with Lucy, pleased that she could at least save Lucy because it's important to David. And I fucking hate this show. Not even 6 minutes of runtime left. Can't fucking have anything. David's pissed, of course, but this motherfucker might have just been seeing his mom die in his head again. He doesn't know anymore. Making sure everybody else is safe isn't his fucking mission. Falco drives Lucy away despite her objections. Again, it's the only thing David asked of Falco. And David doesn't even have a fight with Adam. He just gets snapped in half and laughs because Adam at minimum failed to kill Lucy and Falco. Then he dies. And then Lucy goes to the moon. The end. Ah, damn, this fell apart for me by the end. Let's see. Like I said earlier, visually this is the work of masters. I love Hiroyuki Amaishi's directing. Honestly, most of the character designs are primo. The anime version of Cyberpunk's world here really pulls off the absurdity and flagrancy of the Cyberpunk style here. Again, not the biggest fan of 2077's world personally because I think it's a bit too on the nose. Woo, everybody's a wacky cyborg wearing weird stuff. The future is weird. I don't know how else to say it, but I like it better when it's more cartoony if we're going down that route. And great color design by Yukiko Kakita. So much wonderful use of music to deliver that emotion while still just being really fun to listen to. But man, some of the writing. So it's a tragedy for the most part. Lucy and Falco are the only real survivors, making Falco my favorite living character now. The man will drive through actual Hades for you, so good on him. But let's circle back. What is the point here? When I look at a piece of art as a whole, I tend to remember and care more about the emotions it created and the messages it gives to me, expanding my understanding of art as a whole. Plenty of shit can retread messages and give it its own identity. Plenty of shit can make me feel something without much overall purpose behind it. This show does that for me in many areas. I can find meaning in the characters, sure, but only for some of them. The completion of the story, however, doesn't live up to that meaning I saw in people like Maine or Rebecca. This is David and Lucy's story, and they're genuinely my least favorite characters, excluding the very unlikable likable corpos who I'm supposed to think suck by all accounts. Main is so likable when he's in the right mind. Up to the point of seeing Main, we are given this sobering impression Night City fucking sucks and everybody's a ruthless asshole. But somehow this tough-as-nails gang boss leads David with such care, such unexpected kindness at the end of the day. He helps David survive. He shows him what it means to make it in Night City's underground. He gives David a family. And then he's complicated. The pressure's too much for him, and we only saw glimpses of that before his sudden end. Main isn't perfect. He makes mistakes, he gets in over his head, and he pays the ultimate price, losing somebody important to him in the process, giving Dorio's death some semblance of meaning for his character arc at least. And I sure shit would have expected this to build onto David's character, but holy shit, I feel like it doesn't at all. He watches Main lose everything and says, you know, that looks pretty cool, now me, I want that. I feel like I would have gotten so much more out of David's character if he had used Main's death to change something about his approach, to improve the team and be what Main couldn't be. And he isn't, he's just the same. Worse even, because he doesn't guide anybody like Main did for him. He in fact gets more people killed that he's supposed to care about. Lucy's cool girl act never gets me anywhere. She essentially ends up in the same position as David. I assume it's meant to be poetic that they both served the same cause for each other, Lucy coming out of it alive, but they really could have chosen not to do most of what ruins everything. Lucy learns to open up, I guess, but she's just not very interesting to me. I don't care that she has a backstory forced down my throat. Everybody saw it coming, and the moon fucking sucks. We still can't breathe up there. Kiwi's not the most important character, but she's like a better Lucy story to me too. She's Lucy's main in some ways. Kiwi always wanted the best for Lucy, which is why she told Lucy up front to never trust anybody. Kiwi can't trust, and I'm not even told exactly why. That's fine, it's up for interpretation, but certainly there's a reason for this. It's Kiwi's philosophy. And just like Main, her philosophy leads her to the wrong place. She too is misguided, and she slowly begins to know that, but doesn't know what else to do. Night City, after all, is a merciless place. One must do what one must to survive, and so Kiwi looks after herself, but not without remorse, and not without loss. The internet apparently loves Rebecca as much as I do. I'm happy to agree with that. Rebecca is definitely the best and cuter than Lucy. Fight me. You know who does actually change from the death of a loved one? Rebecca. Pillar himself was never a character that mattered much. He was a goofy guy that annoyed and entertained. Rebecca was content enough with that. It seems the thought hadn't even crossed her mind that he could die without cause. Why would he? The gang has remained pretty stable for a while as far as we know, and then he's murdered and Rebecca snaps. She didn't like showing that she cared. She thought Pillar was kind of a pain in the rectum, but she did not ask for this. Our poor jack-o'-lantern painted goblin doesn't even show up for that whole Tanaka mission. I can only surmise that she's mourning Pillar. Next we see her, she is truly a changed person. She no longer minds if people know she cared for Pillar. She proudly wears hand implants and entertains others just like Pillar did. And she knows what it means to take somebody for granted only to see them disappear. She doesn't want that for David. He's always been on Rebecca's mind. Something about his naivety and his honesty resonated with Rebecca too. And David, that fucking dipshit, doesn't deserve Rebecca. She tries. My god, does she try to stop this dense motherfucker from being Main. She's willing to look past David breaking her heart. She doesn't let that change anything. She just doesn't want to lose somebody close to her like that again. And he just doesn't get it. And then she fucking dies. To what end? What do we get out of Rebecca dying except losing the only character that learned from others, even though she makes plenty of new mistakes with her change of heart? Her dying affects nothing. Even if it did affect David, he's fucking dead too, and it's not because of anything related to Rebecca. So he doesn't care. Lucy doesn't care. Maybe Falco cares, but I don't fucking know. Nothing changes when Rebecca dies. It's just supposed to make me upset, and that's it. At least make me upset to serve a purpose. And so I ask one final time, what do I get out of this story? It's about a bunch of criminals having a whole life together, all ending because they have no choice but to get caught up in corporate feuds to survive, and all of their efforts change nothing about the world. So is the point companies are evil and cyberpunk dystopia is ruled by that? Yeah, I already know that. If that's what it amounts to, that fucking sucks. Maybe there's something about individual identity in there because everything in Night City is superficial and uncaring. Your memory is able to be downloaded and altered at the will of others. The show doesn't really center on that though. For all I know, the 2077 world is superficial for no reason other than to be just like, again, look, isn't this so cyberpunk? People's arms are cannons and shit. And at best, talking about what it means to be a person when your entire being can be downloaded is a retreading of Ghost in the Shell's themes. Again, not necessarily an inherent problem, but I do not see this being fully realized here. It is very character focused, and that's fine. It can even tell me something about the world at large here. Cowboy Bebop does that well. It's fine if there's a fucking point to that character focus, but the only thing I can see here is something about love. I don't know. I don't want to be a stiff, really. I come out of this happy because of how cool it is just sitting there looking at it all. But writing is so important to me. Trigger has done some great writing. I think Kill la Kill has great writing. It's one of my top animes. I guess I hope for more here. I wanted the 2077 world to get a better treatment. Don't get me wrong. I think there are some fun, unique ideas offered in that world. Cyberpsychosis is interesting. There's definitely some tech I haven't seen imagined in quite the same way elsewhere, but that is a small part of a larger picture. I guess what I'm really trying to say is I cannot believe they killed her. They should not have done this. This show sucks!